What's going on, everybody? It's week 15 now. It is week 2 of the playoffs. For some of you guys, it might be the second round or your second week in a 2-week matchup. So either way, let's get right into previewing this week's games. Tonight is Thursday, so we're going to be previewing the Colts versus the Denver Broncos. Now, nobody's excited for this game. Let's be honest. Unless you're a fan of either one of those teams, not really much to be excited for in this one. Now, regardless, there are still players on both teams that, frankly, a lot of fantasy players drafted, such as T.Y. Hilton, Demaryius Thomas, thinking that these guys are going to be fantasy studs this year, end up being fantasy duds. But, we got to still preview it, still go over the information, and let's see what's fantasy relevant and what's not. So, let's go ahead and start with the Denver Broncos. Now, the Denver Broncos, I do believe, are going to win this game, and that's going to be my pick going into this game. Honestly, with a lot of struggling quarterbacks, Marcus Mariota, Alex Smith struggled again. I know he had some tough breaks with some of the plays not actually going into the end zone, but regardless, this is another low week for him after a strong performance 2 weeks ago. But if you have other quarterbacks that may have gotten injured, if you're a Carson Wentz owner, which I am in a few different leagues, and it's really unfortunate because a lot of teams rode him into the fantasy playoffs. But I know come next year, wishing all the best for Carson Wentz, because I know it's tough, especially after the season he's having and his team's having. We all know he wants to be out there, and we all feel bad for him. And I'm not an Eagles fan, but I am a football fan, and I loved watching him play. He's going to be a fantastic player for years to come. So if you are in a dynasty league, stash him. Make sure, if you're in a keeper league, which I am, and I have him, I have a couple of tough decisions coming up for next year. I have Carson Wentz, Deshaun Watson. I also have Kareem Hunt and Travis Kelce, which I'm going to end up having to figure out who I'm going to keep. But anyway, I digress. So for the Broncos, Demaryius Thomas is probably going to be the only Broncos player that I actually really trust in this matchup because of how god-awful the Colts defense has been. Their secondary has been absolutely decimated with injuries. So honestly, I would have the most confidence starting him. Emmanuel Sanders, I actually think is going to be a solid flex player. I think he's going to actually be able to get double-digit points in this game. And I also think, honestly, and this would be the absolutely only reason why I would even consider Trevor Siemian as a possible streaming quarterback. If you're one of those teams that manages your quarterback from week to week, or if you, like I said, had a struggling quarterback, if you had someone who got injured, I would consider possibly starting Trevor Siemian just for this week only because of the matchup, because of how bad the Colts defense has been. As far as the running backs go, it's kind of hard to trust. I think the best one out of, the three out of Anderson, Booker, and Jamal Charles, I think C.J. Anderson would be the best option to start if you absolutely had to do it. Now, in the fantasy playoffs, we want more surefire things than taking risks. But if you're in, a matchup where you got down big in the first of your 2-week matchup in the playoffs, and you needed somebody who has a decent floor but has a higher upside to try and get those additional points, make up a little bit of extra ground, C.J. Anderson probably would be a decent option to help you out in that category. Now, the tight ends, just stay away from them. The Denver tight ends just have not been consistent enough, and just haven't produced all year. So I don't see in any format how you could start a Denver tight end. Now for the Colts honestly it's been a terrible year, and you guys honestly hoped that Andrew Luck would come back, and then halfway through the season they shut him down. So just you guys have had really not much to look forward to. And again, it happens again this week. I just don't like the matchup for anybody at any skill position except for probably Jack Doyle. Denver has been susceptible to tight ends all season long. The tight end has been probably the most productive position against their defense. So start Jack Doyle with confidence. I see him as a top 10 tight end option this week. But as far as the wide receivers, T.Y. Hilton, honestly, only plays really well against good, terrible secondaries, I should say. He's too boom or bust for me to even trust him in a bad matchup with the Denver secondary against Talib and Harris. T.Y. Hilton is just not going to do it for me this week. So I would have him back on my bench. He's only basically his three best games that come against Houston, Cleveland, and what was the other one? Houston, Cleveland, and San Francisco. That's what it was. Which have been three of the bottom secondaries in the entire league. So, and Dante Moncrief has been ruled out for this game. So you'll see more Chester Rogers and Kamar Aiken. There's no way you're starting them either. So, and Jacoby Brissett, hopefully he gets through this game, because I think that Von Miller and the rest of that defensive front seven is just gonna feast. Honestly, they're just gonna rip apart the Colts this week. That offensive line has just been god awful all year. Jacoby Brissett just never has time to throw the ball. So, I actually think that the Denver defense is a great start also. If you need a defense, or if you have them in another defense that you're trying to decide, I think Denver is probably going to be a great one for this week. I think they might end up being a top 5 defense scoring-wise for this week. I actually almost forgot the running backs for the Colts. Frank Gore, it's going to be tough for me to see you starting him. I honestly really only consider him a flex play this week, especially coming off a huge performance this past Sunday in Buffalo, running in that blizzard. He got over 35 touches, 36, I believe, something like that, which is a huge workload for a guy his age, and on a short week. I see them playing from behind also. It's just going to be really tough to see Frank Gore kind of put up a strong performance, or a performance that you're kind of just expecting from him on a week-to-week basis, where he at least gets 60 yards, a few catches, and might find the end zone. He's usually a player you can count on, for anywhere between 12 to 16 points every week. But in a bad matchup on a short week after a huge workload on Sunday, I think you actually might see more Marlon Mack coming into this game. And since they're playing from behind, I think that, the Colts may end up, trying to limit maybe Frank Gore's workload. So if you also need a long shot on the Colts side, I think Marlon Mack might be your guy. I think, outside, like I said, outside of Jack Doyle, Marlon Mack actually may be a smart long shot type player that if you need to make up some ground, if you just need to shoot for the stars, and possibly, get a decent outcome. I think Marlon Mack might be a player you might consider this week. So that's it for this game. Hope you guys enjoy it. I will be doing more videos on the preview games for this weekend. But I have a special segment coming up, and it's called "Am I Smarter Than a Toddler?" Who knows? So you guys will get to meet my daughter, and we have a good time, and you guys will find out more about that segment coming up.